My brother seriously injured my 9-year-old son's leg with a steel rod. And my parents still said he deserved it. I'm James Mitchell, 34 years old. And my brother used a construction-grade steel rod to shatter my son's leg in front of 30 witnesses. Before I tell you how I made sure he would never see the outside of a prison cell again, and how I took everything my parents owned, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I really want to know who's sticking with me through this nightmare. It was supposed to be a celebration. That's the irony that keeps me up at night. It was my father, Robert's, 60th birthday. In our family, appearances were everything. We were in the backyard of my parents' house in Austin, Texas. It was one of those humid afternoons where the air feels heavy enough to wear. The barbecue was smoking, the beer was cold, and the entire extended family was there. Cousins, aunts, neighbors. It was the perfect picture of a successful suburban family. But underneath, it was rotting. I arrived with my son, Lucas. He's 9. He's the kind of kid who still holds the door open for strangers, the kind of kid who saves spiders instead of squishing them. He was wearing his little polo shirt, holding a wrapped gift for his grandfather. I remember looking at him and feeling the swell of pride, but also a knot of anxiety. I always felt anxious going back to my parents' house. My parents, Robert and Patricia, were holding court by the grill. "James, you made it," my dad said, barely looking up from his brisket. "Where's your brother?" "Late as always." That was the dynamic. I was the corporate litigation attorney, the one who followed the rules, the one who built a career at Henderson and Associates. But Derek? Derek was the golden child. He was 38, owned a construction company that I suspected was barely solvent, and he could do no wrong. When Derek finally arrived, the energy in the yard shifted. He didn't just walk in, he invaded the space. He looked disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, smelling faintly of sour whiskey and expensive cologne. He was dragging his wife, Vanessa, by the arm. Vanessa looked terrified. Her face was pale, and she kept looking down at the grass. Behind them walked Mrs. Carmen, Vanessa's mother. She's this sweet, elderly woman who helps Vanessa take care of their twin daughters. She's quiet, respectful, the kind of woman who makes herself small so she doesn't bother anyone. Derek was already shouting before he reached the patio. "I told you I didn't want her here, Vanessa," Derek yelled, gesturing wildly at Mrs. Carmen. "Why can't she take a hint? I'm sick of feeding useless mouths." The music stopped. The chatter died down. 30 people went silent, watching the train wreck unfold. "Derek, please," Vanessa whispered, trying to calm him down. "It's your father's birthday. Let's not do this." "Don't tell me what to do," Derek roared. He turned on Mrs. Carmen. The vitriol spewing from his mouth was vile. He called her a leech. He called her a useless bitch. He accused her of poisoning his daughters' minds against him. I stepped forward. I'm a lawyer. Conflict is my job. But before I could open my mouth, a small voice cut through the tension. "That's not nice, Uncle Derek." It was Lucas, my 9-year-old son. He had stepped between Derek and Mrs. Carmen. He looked tiny next to my hulking brother, but he stood his ground. His voice trembled a little, but he was firm. "Mrs. Carmen is nice. She helps Vanessa with the twins all the time. You shouldn't say bad words to her." For a second, I was paralyzed by how proud I was. He was doing exactly what I taught him. Stand up for the weak. But Derek didn't see a brave child. He saw a challenge to his authority. And Derek never handled challenges well. "You little punk," Derek snarled. His face turned a shade of purple I'll never forget. "You think you can talk back to me? You think you're better than me because your daddy is a fancy lawyer?" "Derek, stop," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I started closing the distance between us. "He's a child. Back off. He needs to learn his place," Derek screamed. There was a pile of construction materials near the back fence. My dad was having Derek redo the patio. Rebar, steel rods, bags of concrete. Derek reached down. His hand closed around a piece of rusted steel rebar, about 2 feet long. Time seemed to slow down. I saw him grip it, I saw the muscles in his forearm tighten. But my brain couldn't process that he would actually use it. Not on family. Not on a child. "Lucas, move!" I screamed. I lunged, but I was too far away. Derek didn't hesitate. He didn't threaten. He swung. He swung that steel rod like a baseball bat with all his strength aiming low. The sound. That is what haunts me. It wasn't a thud. It was a crack. A wet, sickening snap that sounded like a tree branch breaking in a storm. But louder. Much louder. The rod connected with Lucas's right shin. Lucas didn't scream immediately. There was a second of absolute silence where he just looked confused. Then he collapsed. His leg. It was bent. It was bent at an angle that legs aren't supposed to bend. Midway between the knee and the ankle, it just folded. Then the scream came. It was a primal, high-pitched shriek of pure agony that tore through the backyard. "My leg! Daddy! My leg!" I hit the ground next to him. I saw blood soaking through his jeans. The bone had punched through the skin. A compound fracture. "Don't move, buddy. Don't move." I was sobbing, my hands hovering over him, terrified to touch him and cause more pain. I looked up, expecting to see Derek horrified by what he'd done. Instead, he was standing there, breathing heavy, the rod still in his hand, looking satisfied. "That'll teach you respect," Derek spat. I lost my mind. I stood up, ready to kill him. I didn't care about the law. I didn't care about consequences. I was going to tear his throat out. But before I could reach him, hands grabbed me. Not Derek's hands. It was my father. And my mother. They were holding me back. "James, calm down," my father yelled, wrestling my arms. "Don't make a scene. Make a scene," I roared, struggling against his grip. "He just broke Lucas's leg. Look at him. Look at his leg." My mother, Patricia, walked over to Lucas. She didn't kneel. She didn't comfort him. She looked at my son, writhing in the grass, bleeding, and she pursed her lips. Then she looked at me and said the words that killed the son inside me and gave birth to the monster I was about to become. "You've always been too soft on that boy, James," she said, her voice cold and steady. "That's why he's so nosy. He needs to learn not to interfere in adult business. He deserved it." The world stopped spinning. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father, who was nodding in agreement, shielding Derek behind him. "It was just a tap, James," my dad said. "Derek lost his temper. The boy provoked him. Don't call the police. We can handle this as a family. Just a tap." My son's bone was sticking out of his leg. I stopped struggling. I went cold. The rage didn't leave. It just froze into something sharp and deadly. I pulled my phone out. "What are you doing?" Derek sneered. "Gonna call the cops on your own brother?" I didn't answer. I snapped a photo of Lucas's leg. I snapped a photo of Derek holding the bar. I snapped a photo of the crowd. Then I hit record on the voice memo app. "My name is James Mitchell," I said, my voice loud, clear, and terrifyingly calm. "I am 34 years old. I am a senior corporate litigation attorney at Henderson & Associates. It is 2:14 p.m. My brother, Derek Mitchell, has just committed aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against a minor. My parents are currently obstructing my access to my injured child and attempting to dissuade me from seeking medical and legal aid." I looked my father in the eye. "Let go of me, or I will add unlawful restraint to the list of felonies I am about to file." My dad let go like I burned him. I scooped Lucas up in my arms. He was sobbing, drifting in and out of consciousness from the shock. "Daddy, it hurts," he whimpered. "Why is Grandma mad at me?" "She's not mad, buddy." I lied, my tears falling onto his face. "She's just wrong. I've got you. I've got you." I carried him to the car. I didn't wait for an ambulance. I couldn't spend another second in that yard. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. My parents were hugging Derek, comforting him. That was the last time they saw the James they knew. The man driving that car was someone else entirely. The drive to the emergency room was a blur of red lights and Lucas's whimpering. Every bump in the road made him cry out, and every cry felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other reaching back, squeezing his shoulder, promising him it would be okay. But I knew it wouldn't be okay. Not for a long time. When we crashed through the ER doors, the chaos took over. Nurses swarmed us. They cut his jeans open. I saw the full extent of the damage then. It wasn't just a break. His lower leg was mangled. The skin was torn, the bone exposed, the bruising already turning a horrific shade of purple-black. Code trauma, pediatric, bed 3, someone shouted. They wheeled him away. I tried to follow, but a nurse held me back. Sir, you need to fill out the paperwork. We have him. We've got him. I collapsed into a plastic chair in the waiting room, my shirt stained with my son's blood. The adrenaline crashed, leaving me shaking uncontrollably. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. I sat there for 4 hours while they operated. 4 hours of hell. To keep from screaming, I forced my brain to work. I'm a lawyer. I solve problems. But this wasn't a contract dispute. This was my life. My mind drifted back. It wasn't the first time Derek had hurt someone. It wasn't even the first time he'd hurt a family member. I was 12. Derek was 16. We were playing on the second floor of our old house. I had beaten him at a video game. Stupid, right? But Derek grabbed me by the back of my shirt and threw me down the stairs. I broke my wrist and dislocated my shoulder. I remembered the pain, sharp and hot, but what I remembered more clearly was my mother standing over me at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't yell at Derek. She looked at me, her eyes hard. You tripped, James, she had said. We have that family vacation next week. If you tell your father Derek pushed you, he'll cancel the trip. Do you want to ruin the vacation for everyone? You tripped. So I lied. I told the doctor I was running in socks and slipped. I protected Derek. I protected the family image. And in doing so, I taught them that my pain didn't matter. I buried my face in my hands. I did this, I thought. By not stopping them 20 years ago, I let them think they could get away with anything. And now Lucas is paying the price. Mr. Mitchell? I shot up. A surgeon, Dr. Chun, looked exhausted. Is he okay? I asked, my voice cracking. Dr. Chun sighed, taking off his glasses. He's stable. But Mr. Mitchell, this was a devastating injury. Both the tibia and fibula were shattered. We had to insert a titanium rod down the center of the tibia, secure it with 6 screws, and use 2 plates to stabilize the fragments. He paused, looking at his clipboard. I have to ask. The police are on their way. The nature of this injury. This wasn't a fall. The force required to cause this kind of comminuted fracture. It looks like intentional trauma from a blunt weapon wielded with significant force. It was, I said, my voice turning to steel. My brother did it. With a steel rod. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. I see. I'll make sure my report reflects that explicitly. He's going to need at least 3 more surgeries as he grows. The growth plate might be damaged. He'll need physical therapy for at least a year. There's a high chance he'll walk with a limp for the rest of his life. A limp, my 9-year-old boy. A limp for the rest of his life because he told a grown man to be nice. Do whatever you need to do, doctor, I said. I have insurance. I don't care about the cost. The initial estimate for the surgery and the first week of recovery is hovering around $200,000. Dr. Chen warned. Do it, I said. I walked into the recovery room. Lucas was tiny in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, his leg encased in a massive cast elevated on pillows. He looked so pale. His eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, groggy from the anesthesia. Daddy? He whispered. I'm here, buddy, I said, stroking his hair. Is Mrs. Carmen okay? He asked. Did Uncle Derek hit her too? I broke. I just broke. Here he was, his leg held together by metal, and he was worried about the old woman he tried to protect. "She's okay, Lucas," I choked out. "You saved her. You were so brave. Grandma said I was bad," he mumbled, his eyes closing again. "She said I deserved it." The rage that ignited in the backyard flared up again, hotter this time. It wasn't the frantic anger of the assault. It was a cold, calculating fury. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call my parents. I called Jim, the senior partner at my firm. "James? It's Saturday night," Jim answered. "I need a leave of absence, Jim. Partial. I need access to the firm's resources, but I can't take any client cases for a few weeks." "What happened?" "My brother assaulted Lucas. Put him in the hospital. My parents are covering for him." There was a silence on the line. Jim knew me. He knew I was a shark in the courtroom, but he also knew I was a devoted father. "Whatever you need," Jim said. "You want our criminal referral list?" "No," I said. "I'm handling the civil side personally. I need the contact for the best PI we use for corporate fraud. And I need Elena." Elena was my best friend and the scariest family law attorney in Texas. "I'm calling her now," Jim said. "James, bury them." "I intend to," I said. I hung up and dialed Elena. She answered on the first ring. "I heard," she said. "Jim just texted me the code red." "Where are you?" "St. David's Hospital. I'm on my way with the paperwork for a temporary restraining order. I'm filing it against Derek, obviously." "Who else?" "Everyone," I said. "Derek, Vanessa, until I know whose side she's on. And Robert and Patricia Mitchell." "Your parents?" Elena asked. "James, that's the nuclear option. You won't be able to undo that." I looked at Lucas sleeping, his face twitching in pain even through the morphine. I remembered my mother's face. He deserved it. "They aren't my parents anymore, Elena," I said. "They are co-conspirators. File it. I want them to know that the war has started." The next morning, the sun rose, but my world remained dark. I was sitting in the hospital chair, stiff and aching, watching the heart monitor beep. Lucas was still asleep. My phone started buzzing. It was my father. I stared at the screen. Dad calling. For 34 years, that name on the screen meant authority. It meant I had to answer, to explain myself, to seek approval. I let it ring. It stopped. Then it rang again. And again. I finally picked up, putting it on speaker but keeping the volume low so I wouldn't wake Lucas. I also hit the record button again. Texas is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm a part of. "Where the hell are you?" Robert's voice barked. "No, how is Lucas?" "No, is he alive?" "I'm at the hospital, Robert," I said. I couldn't bring myself to call him Dad. "You need to come home right now," he demanded. "Derek is a wreck. He's worried sick about what you might do. You ran off like a lunatic yesterday." "Derek is a wreck?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Lucas has 6 screws in his bone, Robert. He might never walk normally again." "Oh, stop being dramatic." My mother's voice chimed in from the background. "It's a broken leg. Boys break bones. Derek broke his arm when he was 10. Remember?" "Derek fell out of a tree," I hissed. "He wasn't beaten with a steel rod by a grown man." "He provoked him," my mother yelled. "You can't let a child talk back to his elders like that. It's disrespectful." "Derek was disciplining him." "Disciplining him?" I stood up, walking into the hallway to keep my voice down. "It's aggravated assault on a minor. It's a 2nd-degree felony. And you two stood there and watched." "Now you listen to me," my father said, his voice dropping to that low, threatening register that used to terrify me. "We are a family. We do not air our dirty laundry. If you file a police report, you are destroying this family. Think about your inheritance, James. Think about your future. You want to throw everything away because of a misunderstanding." There it was. The leverage. The money. The status. They thought that's what I cared about. "You think I care about your money?" I asked quietly. You think I care about being part of a family that thinks crippling a 9-year-old is discipline? If you press charges, my father said, you are dead to us. We will cut you off. We will testify that Lucas attacked Derek first. We'll say the boy had a weapon. Who are they going to believe? 3 adults or 1 hysterical father? I felt a chill run down my spine. They were already plotting. They were ready to lie under oath to frame my son. Thank you, Robert, I said. You just gave me everything I needed. What? I'm recording this call. You just admitted to conspiring to commit perjury and witness tampering. You wouldn't, he stammered. Goodbye, Robert. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. 2 hours later, Elena walked in. She looked like an avenging angel in a Prada suit. She handed me a stack of papers. Temporary restraining order granted, she said. The judge was horrified by the photos. It bars Derek, Vanessa, and your parents from coming within 500 feet of Lucas or you. Did you serve them? Process server is pulling up to your parents' house right now, she smirked. My phone buzzed again. A text from Derek. You think you're smart? I know people in the PD. You're making a big mistake, little brother. Watch your back. Add that to the evidence pile, I said, showing Elena the text. Just then, Detective Martinez walked in. He was a big guy, looked like he'd seen it all. He took off his hat when he saw Lucas in the bed. Mr. Mitchell? Martinez asked. I'm Detective Martinez. I've been assigned to the case. Thank you for coming, I said. I saw the photos from the scene, Martinez said, his face grim. And I spoke to Dr. Chun. In 15 years on the force, I've seen some bad things, but a grown man doing this to a kid at a birthday party? That's a new low. My parents are claiming it was an accident, I said. Or self-defense. Martinez snorted. Self-defense against a 60-pound kid? The medical report says the angle of impact was downward. The kid was on the ground or standing significantly lower. The physics don't lie. I'm issuing a warrant for Derek Mitchell's arrest this afternoon. Good, I said. But detective, be careful. My brother has connections. Or he thinks he does. I don't care who he knows, Martinez said. He's going down for this. One more thing, I said, handing him a flash drive. This is a recording of my parents trying to coerce me into dropping the charges and threatening to lie to the police. I want them charged with obstruction of justice. Martinez raised an eyebrow. You don't pull any punches, do you? Not anymore, I said. That afternoon, while Lucas was watching cartoons, trying to distract himself from the pain, I sat with my laptop. I wasn't just going to send Derek to jail. I was going to dismantle him. I logged into the public records database. I started pulling everything on Mitchell Development Group. My brother lived like a king. He drove a massive truck, had a boat, took vacations to Cabo twice a year. But I knew his business model. He was cheap. I started looking at his recent permits. Then I looked at the lawsuits. There were 3 small claims suits from homeowners complaining about cracked foundations. They had been settled out of court. Why settle if the work is good? Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A series of transfers from a joint account held by Robert and Patricia Mitchell into the business account of Mitchell Development Group. $50,000 here, $20,000 there. Over the last 5 years, my parents had transferred nearly $400,000 to Derek. I checked their property records. Their house, the one they boasted was paid off, had a second mortgage on it taken out 3 years ago. They weren't just emotionally supporting him. They were funding him. They were bankrupting themselves to keep his failing business afloat while he played the rich tycoon. And they threatened to cut me out of the inheritance? There was no inheritance left. Derek had eaten it all. Oh, Mom and Dad, I whispered to the screen. You bet on the wrong horse. I picked up the phone and called Tom, the private investigator. Tom, I have a job for you. I need you to look into Mitchell Development Group. Specifically, I want you to find the building inspector who signed off on the Oakwood project. And I want you to talk to his undocumented workers. Find me the dirt. Consider it done, Tom said. The war had moved from the backyard to the books. And in the books, I was the master. The next week was a blur of physical therapy and late-night strategy sessions. Lucas was discharged, but our house had to be transformed. I had to install ramps. I had to carry him to the bathroom. Seeing my active, happy boy reduced to crawling or being carried ignited a fresh wave of hatred in me every single day. But while I was playing nurse, Tom, my PI, was tearing Derek's life apart. We met at a diner far away from my office. Tom slid a manila folder across the table. "It's worse than you thought, James," Tom said. He looked tired. I opened the folder. It was a forensic accounting of a disaster. "Derek isn't just a bad builder," Tom explained. "He's a criminal. You were right about the bribes. We found a building inspector, Thomas Garza. He's been signing off on foundations that aren't up to code. Derek is using half the rebar required by law. He's mixing the concrete with too much sand to save money." I felt sick. These are people's homes. "It gets better," Tom said grimly. "Or worse. He's got a crew of undocumented guys. He pays them half the minimum wage in cash and threatens to call ICE if they complain. One of them, a guy named Miguel, is willing to talk. Derek owes him 3 months of back pay." "And the money?" I asked. "How is he sustaining the lifestyle?" "He's running a Ponzi scheme, essentially," Tom said. "He takes deposits for new projects to pay for the materials on the old projects. But the hole is getting too deep. That's why he needed your parents." I looked at the bank statements Tom had obtained. "Your parents cashed out their 401ks, Tom pointed out. "They took the maximum penalty hit. They poured everything into this. They think they're investing in the family empire. But the money is gone. Derek spent it on the boat, the truck, the gambling debts. Gambling. Online poker. High stakes. He's lost about $150,000 in the last 2 years." I sat back, stunned. My parents, who lectured me about saving every penny, who told me I was wasteful for buying organic groceries, had lit their entire retirement on fire to keep Derek's ego inflated. "Does Vanessa know?" I asked. "That's the wild card," Tom said. "I don't think she knows about the fraud, but she knows about the abuse. Neighbors have heard yelling. Police have been called twice for noise complaints, but no charges were ever filed." I thought of Vanessa's terrified face at the party. She wasn't an accomplice. She was a hostage. "I need to talk to the building commission," I said, "and the IRS, and the labor board. If you do that, you blow up the company," Tom warned. "Your parents lose their investment. The house is collateral on the business loan, James. If the business folds, the bank takes your parents' house." I thought about Lucas screaming on the grass. I thought about my mother saying, "He deserved it. Burn it down," I said. I spent the next 3 nights compiling the dossier. I didn't just send an anonymous tip. I drafted a formal legal complaint on behalf of concerned citizens and sent it to the city attorney, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and the state licensing board. I attached the photos of the cracked foundations. I attached Miguel's affidavit. I attached the bank records showing the commingling of funds. Then I turned my attention to the criminal trial. The district attorney was charging Derek with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and injury to a child. Serious charges. But Derek had hired a sleazy defense attorney named Rick, the Shark Southern. Southern's strategy was clear: attack the victim. In the pretrial hearings, Southern filed motions claiming Lucas was historically aggressive and had a behavioral disorder. They were trying to paint my 9-year-old son as a menace to society to justify Derek's self-defense. I had to prepare Lucas for the stand. "Lucas," I said one night, sitting by his bed, "they are going to ask you mean questions. They are going to try to make you mad." "Like Uncle Derek?" Lucas asked. "Yes, but you have to be stronger than Uncle Derek. You just tell the truth. Can you do that?" "I can do it," Lucas said. He looked older than 9. The pain had aged him. The day before the trial, I received a knock on my door. It was late, raining hard. I checked the security camera. It was a woman in a hoodie. I opened the door. It was Vanessa. She was soaking wet, shivering. She had a bruise on her cheek that she had tried to cover with makeup. "James," she whispered. I can't do it anymore." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She walked into the living room, trembling. "He hit me because I asked about the money. He said it was my fault you were suing us." "You need to leave him, Vanessa," I said gently. "I know," she sobbed, "but I'm scared. He says he'll take the girls. He says his lawyer will destroy me." "I will represent you," I said. "Pro bono. I will get you full custody. I will get you the house if there's a house left. But you have to help me. You have to tell the truth about what happened that day." She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. "He has cameras," she whispered, "inside the house. He forgets they're there. But I have the app." "What is this?" I asked, taking the drive. "It's from the night of the party," she said. "After we got home. And some other nights." I plugged it into my laptop. I clicked the file dated the night of the assault. The video showed Derek pacing in their living room, drinking straight from a bottle. My parents were there too. Video audio. "Derek, did you see his legs snap? Little brat. I told him I'd break him if he stepped up to me." "Patricia, Mom, you have to be careful, honey. James is going to be a problem." "Robert, Dad, don't worry. I'll handle James. We just stick to the story. The kid rushed you with a rock. You pushed him away and he fell. Simple. Derek, I should have hit him harder. Maybe then he'd learn to shut his mouth." I froze. It was a confession. And it was proof of the conspiracy. "Vanessa," I said, looking at her, "this ends everything." "I know," she said. "I'm ready." The courtroom was packed. My parents were sitting in the front row behind the defense table, looking like pious churchgoers. My mother was wearing her Sunday best, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Derek sat next to his lawyer, wearing a suit that didn't fit, trying to look like a misunderstood businessman. I sat in the gallery. As a witness and the father of the victim, I couldn't be the prosecutor. But I had prepped the ADA, assistant district attorney, with everything. Lucas was called to the stand. Seeing my son crutch his way up to the witness box was heartbreaking. The bailiff had to help him up the steps. His cast was covered in signatures from his classmates. The ADA asked him simple questions. "What happened? Who hit you?" Lucas answered clearly. "Uncle Derek hit me with the metal stick because I asked him to stop yelling at Mrs. Carmen." Then Rick Southern stood up. He walked toward Lucas with a predatory smile. "Now, Lucas," Southern began, "you're a strong boy, aren't you? You like to play rough." "I guess," Lucas said. "Isn't it true that you picked up a rock and threatened your uncle?" "No," Lucas said firmly. "Isn't it true that you hate your uncle because he's strict with you?" "I don't hate him," Lucas said. "I just wanted him to stop being mean. You have a history of fighting at school, don't you, Lucas?" "Objection," the ADA shouted. "Relevance. Goes to character, Your Honor," Southern smirked. "I pushed a bully because he was kicking a dog," Lucas said, his voice rising. "I didn't hit him with a metal bar." The jury murmured. Lucas held his own. Southern tried to rattle him, but Lucas's innocence was like a shield. Then came the defense's turn. My father took the stand. "James has always been jealous of Derek," Robert lied smoothly. "He's coached the boy to lie. Derek was just defending himself. It was a tragic accident." I watched my father commit perjury without blinking. The man who taught me to fish, who taught me to ride a bike, was sitting there destroying his own grandson to protect his ego. But we had a surprise. "The state calls Vanessa Mitchell," the ADA announced. Derek's head snapped up. My parents looked confused. They thought Vanessa was at home with the kids. Vanessa walked in. She didn't look at Derek. She walked straight to the stand. "Mrs. Mitchell," the ADA said, Can you tell us what happened that day? Derek was drunk, Vanessa said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. He was angry because I brought my mother. He hates her. Lucas tried to help. Derek smiled before he hit him. Objection, Southern yelled. Speculation, sustained on the smile, the judge said. Continue. And did your husband say anything to you after the event? Yes, Vanessa said. He said he was glad he did it. Liar, Derek shouted from the table. You useless. Order. The judge slammed the gavel. We have evidence, Your Honor, the ADA said. We would like to submit Exhibit G. Video footage provided by Mrs. Mitchell. Southern looked panicked. He hadn't seen this in discovery because Vanessa had provided it to the police only that morning as a rebuttal to the defense's new claims. The video played on the large screens. The audio filled the room. I told him I'd break him. We just stick to the story. The kid rushed you with a rock. My parents' faces went white. My mother actually grabbed her chest. Derek slumped in his chair. The jury wasn't murmuring anymore. They were glaring. They were looking at Derek like he was a monster. They were looking at my parents with disgust. No further questions, the ADA said. The closing arguments were short. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. We stood up when they returned. We, the jury, find the defendant, Derek Mitchell, guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Guilty of injury to a child. Derek closed his eyes. My mother started wailing. No, my baby. But it wasn't over. Sentencing will be set for next week, the judge said. Bail is revoked. Defendant is remanded to custody. The bailiff moved in. Derek stood up, and for the first time he looked at me. He looked small. He looked scared. James, he mouthed. Help me. I looked him dead in the eye and turned my back. I walked over to Lucas and hugged him. We got him, buddy. He can't hurt anyone ever again. The criminal trial was just the first domino. The sentencing hearing was brutal. Because of the video and the lack of remorse, the judge threw the book at him. Derek got 45 years. In Texas, you serve at least half before you're eligible for parole. He was 38. He wouldn't breathe free air until he was an old man. But I wasn't done. I had promised to bury them. I moved forward with the civil suit. I sued Derek for $7 million in damages. And I sued my parents for negligent entrustment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The investigation into Mitchell Development Group exploded. The city shut down all his sites. The IRS raided his office. The fines were astronomical. Because my parents had leveraged everything they owned to back Derek's bonds and loans. The collapse of the company triggered a financial avalanche. The bank foreclosed on their house. The one I grew up in. The one they were so proud of. The day of the auction I drove by. I saw the for sale sign. I saw my father loading boxes into a rented U-Haul. He looked 20 years older. He shuffled. My mother was sitting in the passenger seat of their old sedan, staring blankly at the dashboard. They had no retirement, no home, no status. Their friends at the country club had shunned them after the news of the "he deserved it" comment came out in the trial. They were social pariahs. I pulled up in my truck. I didn't get out. I just rolled down the window. My father saw me. He stopped loading a box. He walked over slowly. James, he said. His voice was cracked. We have nowhere to go. The apartment complex requires a deposit we don't have. Can we stay in your guest house? Just for a few weeks. I looked at this man who conspired to frame my son. This man who chose his golden child over decency. Where is Derek staying? I asked. He's in prison, James. You know that. Exactly, I said. You invested everything in him. You chose him. You protected him. You should go ask him for help. He's your brother, my dad pleaded. We are your parents. No, I said. My family is at home. My family is Lucas, who is learning to walk again. My family is Vanessa, who I'm helping get a degree. You? You're just the people who broke my son's leg and laughed about it. James, please. He was crying now. We're old. We have nothing. You have exactly what you earned, I said. I rolled up the window. I put the truck in drive. And I drove away, leaving them standing in the driveway of a house they no longer owned, watching the son they rejected drive away into a future they would never be a part of. Time is a strange mechanic. When you are in the middle of trauma, seconds feel like hours. The sound of that steel rod hitting my son's leg played on a loop in my mind for months, stretching every moment into an eternity of guilt and rage. But once the dust settles, once you cut out the cancer that was poisoning your life, time speeds up. It becomes fluid. It becomes kind. 5 years have passed since the gavel fell and my brother was dragged out of the courtroom in handcuffs. 5 years since I looked at my parents in that driveway and chose my son over their approval. People ask me if I regret it. They ask if I miss them. They ask if holidays are lonely. Let me tell you about my life now. Last Saturday, I sat in the bleachers of the Austin High School stadium. The Texas sun was blazing, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer off the asphalt. Down on the field, the freshman soccer team was playing the district finals. In the goal stood a 14-year-old boy. He's tall now, lanky, with hair that refuses to stay combed. If you look closely when he walks, you can see a slight hitch in his step. It's subtle. It's the only physical reminder of the titanium rod that still reinforces his right tibia. The opposing striker broke through the defense. He was fast, charging straight for the net. I held my breath. The old fear flared up, that instinct to jump the fence and shield him. But I stayed seated. Lucas didn't flinch. He didn't back down. He dove. He threw his body across the grass, arms outstretched, and blocked the shot with his chest. He scrambled up, shouted commands to his defenders, and cleared the ball. The crowd went wild. I wasn't just clapping, I was roaring. Beside me, Vanessa was screaming, "That's my nephew, Vanessa." That's the other beautiful twist in this story. After the trial, after the divorce was finalized, she didn't just survive. She thrived. I helped her get into a paralegal program. She works at my firm now. She's one of the sharpest researchers I have. She took the trauma Derek inflicted on her and turned it into fuel to help other women escape abusive marriages. Mrs. Carmen sat next to us, holding a cooler of orange slices. She's older now, her movements slower, but her smile is constant. She lives in the guest house on my property, the same guest house my father had begged to stay in. But unlike him, she fills the space with warmth, baking cookies and teaching Lucas Spanish. We are a family, not bound by the toxic obligation of blood, but bound by respect, by shared scars, and by genuine love. But you guys know that every light casts a shadow. And while we were living in the light, the shadows were consuming the people I left behind. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 5 years. I blocked their numbers. I returned their letters unopened. I knew through the grapevine that they were living in a rundown apartment complex on the outskirts of the city, surviving on Social Security and food stamps. Then, 3 weeks ago, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. It was the warden from the Huntsville unit. "Mr. Mitchell?" The voice was dry, bureaucratic. "I'm calling regarding inmate number 023489. Derek Mitchell." My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with a sudden, cold anticipation. "I'm listening." "There was an incident in the yard this morning," the warden said. "An altercation over a gambling debt. Your brother sustained a severe cranial trauma. He was transported to the infirmary, but he succumbed to his injuries at 9:42 hours. Dead. Derek was dead. I waited for the grief. I waited for the tears. I waited for that brotherly bond to pull at my heartstrings. But there was nothing, just a vast, quiet sense of relief. The boogeyman was gone. The monster who shattered my son's leg and laughed about it was gone. "Are you there, sir?" the warden asked. "I'm here," I said. "What happens now?" "We contacted his parents listed on file," the warden continued. "But they claimed they didn't have the funds to claim the body. They listed you as the next of kin for financial responsibility. Of course they did. Even in death, Derek was a financial black hole, and my parents were broke. I'll handle the cremation, I said. No service. Just the cremation. I drove to the funeral home 3 days later to sign the paperwork. I didn't tell Lucas. He didn't need to know. He was studying for a history exam, and that was more important than the death of a man who tried to cripple him. When I walked into the lobby, I saw them, Robert and Patricia. 5 years had aged them 20. My father, once a proud, arrogant man who commanded the room, was hunched over a cane. His clothes were threadbare, hanging loosely on his frame. My mother looked frail, her eyes darting around nervously. They looked up when I entered. For a second, I saw a flicker of the old expectation. That I was there to fix it, to pay the bills, to make the pain go away. James, my mother whispered. She stood up shakily. You came. I came to sign the papers, I said, keeping my distance. I'm paying for the cremation. That's it. He's your brother, my father croaked. We need to give him a proper burial. A plot. A headstone. People need to pay their respects. What people? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. The people he scammed? The workers he stole from? The family he destroyed? There is no one coming, Robert. How can you be so cruel? My mother cried. We lost everything. We lost our house. We lost our retirement. And now we lost our son. And you stand there in your expensive suit and look down on us. I looked at her. Really looked at her. You didn't lose everything, I said. You gave it away. You bet everything on a bad man because he was your favorite. You sacrificed me. You tried to sacrifice Lucas. You looked at my son screaming in the grass with a broken bone, and you said he deserved it. I was upset, she stammered. I didn't mean it. You meant it, I said. And that sentence cost you your family. We are destitute, James, my father said, his pride finally breaking. We can't afford rent next month. The landlord is threatening eviction. Please, you have so much. Just help us get a small place. For your mother. It was the moment I had played out in my head 1,000 times. The moment they would come crawling back. Part of me, the old James, the people pleaser, wanted to write a check. It would be so easy. It would be a tax write-off. But then I thought of Lucas. I thought of the night terrors he had for 2 years. I thought of the limp. I can't help you, I said. Won't. My father corrected bitterly. You won't help us. I won't, I agreed. Because every dollar I give you is a betrayal of my son. You aren't my parents. You are strangers who share my DNA. Figure it out. I signed the papers. I instructed the funeral director to give the ashes to them. I didn't want them. As I walked out into the bright Texas afternoon, I heard my mother weeping. It was a mournful, desperate sound. But I didn't turn back. I got into my car, checked my phone, and saw a text from Lucas. Dad, Mrs. Carmen made enchiladas. Hurry home. I smiled. I started the engine. I was going home. And for the first time in my entire life, I knew exactly where that was. That evening, after the enchiladas were eaten and the kitchen was cleaned, I sat on the back porch with a glass of iced tea. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of violet and burnt orange. The cicadas were starting their evening chorus. Lucas came out and sat next to me. He's 14, so he doesn't cuddle anymore. But he sat close enough that our shoulders brushed. You okay, Dad? He asked. You seemed quiet at dinner. I looked at him. He's so perceptive. He has this emotional intelligence that I lacked at his age because I was too busy trying to dodge my brother's fists and my parents' criticism. I saw your grandparents today, I said. Lucas went still. He didn't ask why. He just waited. Uncle Derek died, I said. Lucas looked down at his hands. He traced the scar on his shin through his jeans. It was an unconscious habit he had whenever Derek's name came up. Are you sad? He asked. No, I answered honestly. I'm not. Is that bad? No, Lucas said. He was a bad person. He hurt people. He hurt me. He did, I said. And he can't hurt you anymore. What about Grandma and Grandpa? Lucas asked. Are they okay? They are struggling, I said. They asked for money. They asked for help. Lucas looked up at me. His eyes were dark, serious. What did you say? I said no. Lucas nodded slowly. Good. That one word hit me harder than anything else. Good. My son, the boy with the kindest heart I know, the boy who defended an elderly woman against a raging drunk, agreed that his grandparents should be left to their fate. It wasn't out of malice. It was out of justice. You know why I said no, right? I asked him. Not just because I'm angry. Because if you help them, you're saying what they did was okay, Lucas said. Mrs. Carmen told me that. She said forgiving someone without them being sorry is just letting them hurt you again. I reached out and squeezed his shoulder. Mrs. Carmen is a wise woman. She says you're a hero. Lucas grinned, the tension breaking. She says you saved us all. I'm not a hero, Lucas, I said. I'm just a dad. And a dad's only job is to protect his pack. We sat there in silence as the stars came out. I thought about the trajectory of our lives. If I hadn't recorded that conversation in the hospital, if I hadn't investigated the company, if I had bowed to the pressure and kept the peace, Lucas would be crippled and silenced, taught that his pain didn't matter. I would be miserable, drained of my finances and my self-respect. Derek would still be terrorizing everyone, emboldened by his immunity. My parents would still be smug, enabling monsters. By burning the bridge, I had built a fortress. I realized then that the lawsuit wasn't about the money. We donated most of the settlement to a charity for victims of domestic violence anyway. It wasn't about the jail time. It was about the statement. It was a declaration that abuse stops here. It stops with me. The next morning, I went into my office. I unlocked the safe in the wall. Inside was a small box. It contained the USB drive Vanessa gave me, the photos of Lucas's leg, and the recording of my parents. I took them out. I walked to the shredder. I destroyed the photos. I smashed the USB drive with a hammer. I didn't need the evidence anymore. The verdict was in. The sentence had been served. Holding onto the artifacts of trauma was just another way of keeping it alive. I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to Lucas. Not for him to read now, but for when he becomes a man, maybe a father himself. I wrote about the difference between being nice and being good. Being nice is what my parents wanted. Polite compliance, silence in the face of wrong. Being good is what Lucas did, standing up for the vulnerable even when it costs you. I wrote, Lucas, never let anyone tell you that family gives them a free pass to hurt you. Love is an action, not a title. Respect is earned, not inherited. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, not because you are my son, but because you taught me how to be a man. I sealed the envelope and put it back in the safe. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the firm. We had a new client, a young woman, disowned by her family for reporting her uncle's fraud. She was scared, broke, and alone. I smiled. Send her in, I told my assistant. I wasn't just James Mitchell, the corporate shark anymore. I was James Mitchell, the man who burns down toxic kingdoms to build safe havens. And I had a lot of work to do. As I watched the young woman walk into my office, looking at me with the same terrified eyes Vanessa used to have, I knew exactly what to say. Sit down, I said. You're safe here. And we are going to make them pay. We have reached the end of this journey. And if there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this. Toxic family members are not your destiny. So many of us are raised with the idea that blood is thicker than water, that we must endure abuse, manipulation, and disrespect simply because it comes from a parent or a sibling. We are taught that setting boundaries is selfish and that keeping the peace is more important than our own safety. My story proves that is a lie. Keeping the peace is often just a code word for tolerating the abuse. When I finally stood up for my son, I lost my parents and my brother, but I gained my life back. I gained a future where my son walks with his head high, knowing his father will always fight for him. I gained a home filled with genuine love, not performative obligation. Justice isn't always about a court verdict. Sometimes, justice is simply removing yourself from the equation. It's refusing to be the fuel for someone else's fire. It's understanding that you have the right to choose your family. I want to hear from you guys now. This was a heavy story, but I hope it was a liberating one. What is the one lesson from this story that hit you the hardest? Do you think I was right to refuse my parents' help at the end? Or, if this story resonated with you and you're glad justice was served, just comment the word good below. Let me see how many of you are standing with Lucas and me. Your interaction helps this channel grow, but more importantly, it helps spread the message that abuse should never be tolerated, no matter who it comes from. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, protect your pack, and never be afraid to burn a bridge that leads to nowhere.